All right, welcome. Today we're going to be going over some of the water storage technology involved in dams, and in particular, I'm going to want you to be putting these dams into two different categories, and then a couple of dams that straddle the categories that we're going to look at. So. And then the first two actually that we'll look at are actually gonna kind of have their own categories as well. But we'll take a look at that starting now. Okay, so there we go. Here are the first two sets of simple dams. Now the one on the right you may or may not recognize. This is a beaver dam. This is it bears similarity to the human the human dams that we make, but for a slightly different purpose. A lot of times what the beavers want to do is they want to make a little pond where there isn't one, and the reason why is that gives them a convenient location to build their lodge that's hard for other predators to get into. So the lodge will basically be a mound of mud and sticks that the predators can't really get to, and the entrance to the lodge is in the pond that the beavers have made with their dam. So it'll start as a stream. They'll put sticks and mud in the way to make this little pond, and then they'll build their lodge in the pond. And one of the other benefits of the pond is it provides a nice little habitat for fish and things like that. The most similar type of dam we have to that is it's kind of the Earthend Dam, or just basically what it is. It's a barrier of rocks and mud and such to kind of keep a river or possibly a pond or a reservoir just kind of isolated. And you see these occasionally. A lot of times there's a road along the top of it so you can access the reservoir if you want. This tends to be a somewhat common type of dam. Again, usually for water storage, for drinking or perhaps irrigation or something like that. Tends to be somewhat common. We're mostly going to be looking at the more modern dams, though, the ones that require steel and concrete to make. One of the most famous in America is, of course, the Hoover Dam. I like this picture of it because you get a pretty good sense of not only how tall it is, but just the way in which it's really part of a canyon. Like the river that it's damming up, the Colorado River, is really it's a river that sort of grinds down through a canyon in its whole way. And it's really what makes these kinds of dams possible, because you'll see that the edges of the dam are braced on the sides of the canyon. And you really, if you want to make these kinds of dams, and these are the kinds that generate electricity, they're called hydroelectric dams, you really do need you need to be able to have this kind of structure where you'll have a lot of elevation change, and that typically goes in this area with canyons. So getting a little bit closer to it, that's in front of that bridge. Similar sort of view. I also like this view because you can get a better sense of the sort of arch shape that the dam makes, and that's something we'll see. The next image actually shows us looking from the other angle. Again, I like the arch shape. You can also see how the arch is braced against the canyon walls on one side, but you also have you can kind of see that not only is it arch shaped along the top, it also kind of looks like it's arch shaped along the bottom, to the point where it braces against this thing, whatever that is down there. So that would be the Hoover Dam. This next one's the Drawback Dam. I like this view of it because, again, you can see that the reservoir up here is not excessive, but it is quite a bit higher than the low part of the dam, showing that in order to get these hydroelectric dams to work, whatever kind you're working, you do need an elevation change. Now this one it does give you a sense how it's almost entirely straight. There's not really that arch shape we saw with the Hoover Dam. The Idukki Dam, again, good view of the elevation difference. And this one is more of an arch shape, so somewhat more similar to the Hoover Dam. But when we go look at it from another angle, The Hoover Dam was much more slanted downward. This one almost, if anything, it almost seems to curve, you know, backward, sort of in that way. But it's much closer to just being like a sheer drop off or a steep wall in this particular dam. So so that's kind of what we're seeing here. So a little bit different than both the other dams we saw so far. This is the Idukki Dam. This side of it is actually the upstream side. So this is the reservoir up here. It's a little bit low, actually. It looks like you know, in times where the water's higher, it could go up to here. But I did like this picture because, again, you can see kind of on this side, it's still a very sort of steep wall on that side. And if we go down to the other side, just like with the Idukki Dam, on the downstream side, it is, you know, it's virtually a straight drop off there. Now, if we compare these two to the Drawback, there's significantly less material in these two. And if you think about it, we'll talk about this when we categorize them, but this comes with a price. So let's go to the Grand Coulee Dam. This is a dam in Washington, I believe. Now, this one is kind of interesting because it's significantly wider. It's made of straight segments as opposed to arch segments. It is significantly wider than a lot of the dams we've seen. And even though we can definitely tell that there is an elevation change here, it's not like this thing is wedged into a canyon like we saw with the Idukki, the Idukki, or even the Hoover Dams. So this one really, it is, you know, it's spanning a much wider area. And as a consequence, you can see that, you know, there's nothing for that arch shape to really brace on, so this one doesn't have that arch shape. Getting up closer, this is a similarity we can kind of see to the Hoover Dam, where instead of a sheer drop-off, it's sort of an angled drop down to the bottom there. And so we think about why that's the case, why it needs to be like that. Three Gorges Dam is this is a dam in China. It's similar to the Grand Coulee Dam. It's hard to get the whole picture in the whole dam in one picture, as I found out as I was looking through this. But when we look at the next picture, we can kind of see that it's similar to the Grand Coulee Dam in that all these, you know, it's slanting down to the bottom instead of a sheer drop off like it was for those arch-shaped dams. The Coulee Dam, another arch-shaped dam. We see that we have this arch shape, and a little difficult, but kind of along here you can see the way it's kind of bracing against the canyon. And when we look at the other side, just like with the other arch-shaped dams, we have a sheer drop-off of these edges here. The Drawback Dam. This is in the former Soviet Union somewhere. Very similar to the Grand Coulee Dam and the Three Gorges Dam in that you've got, there's no arch shape, it's perfectly straight, but, it's not really a canyon for it to brace on, but it does have this sort of slanted wall that's holding back the water. Another view of that with the Drawback Dam. So you can see down here, this is what we call the Powerhouse. It's where all the electricity is generated. And then this one, the Daniel Johnson Dam. It's a little bit different because we're seeing sort of a combination. And I include this one because I do really like how it combines almost an arcade shape here. In something that kind of looks like, you know, like the side of the Drawback Dam, but with these arches built into it. So kind of a unique structure for this one. Another angle, you can see that the sides of the arch, they angle down like the Grand Coulee or the Drawback Dam, but there's this long row, this long arcade of arches that basically avoids making the thing be completely solid. So when we start grouping these into two categories, first type is the arch dam, and you can see the various different arch dams. Now you may be thinking, oh, shouldn't the Hoover Dam be included in that? And maybe so. So we'll talk about that in a bit. But there are a few distinguishing characteristics of the arch dam. And first is the reason it's called the arch dam. It is arched in shape. And basically, it's relying on the strength of the arch itself to hold back all the water. So it's easiest to see probably in this one right here. But the water wants to flow downstream. And it's the push of the water that is kind of acting like gravity. And it's this catenary arch shape that's holding the water back. Now, the other thing we'll notice is that these all have a steep drop-off on the edge there. I think these are both the Coulee Dam, actually. What that means is this dam, it's not that it doesn't require any materials, but it doesn't require nearly as much as the other type of dam. Now, the drawback, there are a couple of drawbacks. One, you need to have really good supports for these arches. So they tend to work well if you've got these narrow canyons where you can brace the sides of an arch against the canyon. The other main problem with this dam has to do with what happens when arches fail. It's a little bit more difficult to predict when you're just looking at it from the dam's perspective, but if you think about what would happen if one of the little stones of the arch, just in a Roman arch, got punched out, well, the whole arch would collapse. Same thing happens with an arch dam. If any part of the dam starts to fail, basically the integrity of the entire arch will start to degrade, and so if one part of the arch breaks, basically the whole thing breaks. Now when that happens, what you effectively have is all the water that's being stored very, very quickly will run downstream, and that can be absolutely devastating to people that happen to live down there. So failures of this kind can do a lot of damage. So the arch dam has its benefits, also has its drawbacks. The other type of dam is, of course, a gravity dam, and had a lot of different, the Bratsk, the Three Gorges, the Grand Coulee, and the Drawback Dam are all examples of gravity dams. Now, these ones have some different advantages and some disadvantages. I'll start with the disadvantages. Basically, because they are angled down like so, they require a lot more material. The idea is that they need to be massive enough to hold the water back. So that's why it's actually called a gravity dam. The dam itself, it's basically the weight of gravity pulling down on the dam prevents the water from moving. The dam is basically a heavy rock that the water just can't move out of the way. And this is beneficial because if one part of the dam fails, a lot of time the rest of the dam holds up just fine. So if for whatever reason, backing up, if for whatever reason this part of the probably wouldn't happen, but if that part of the Drawback Dam were to fail, the weight of the rest of the dam would prevent, would keep that more or less intact, which would prevent an extreme amount of downstream flooding. Now, the other thing about that is you can situate these dams in a spot where you don't have as good a bracing, like for the Grand Coulee Dam or even on the Three Gorges Dam, where arch dams would not work particularly well here. But the gravity dam works. The downside is that they require a lot more material to make. So what kind of dam is the Hoover Dam then? From this angle, actually from both angles, we could make a case that it's an arch dam. However, the main thing it has, or does not have, that the other arch dams did have, is its side angles down like so. And for this reason, we call the Hoover Dam an arch gravity dam. And basically what it's trying to do, it's trying to take the strengths of both of them. So it takes the strength of the arch, it also, situates it in a spot that would be acceptable for an arch dam. braces the ends of the arch along the canyon walls. But then it also makes makes it kind of a gravity dam, which basically makes the dam safer, makes it able to hold back more water, things like that. So that would be the Hoover Dam. Hoover Dam is an arch gravity dam. Now, the Daniel Johnson Dam, basically what it looks like, it's kind of like basically a gravity dam, but instead of filling in each spot with solid material like you'd see on the Drawback or the Grand Coulee Dam, what it does is it makes a bunch of individual arches that it uses to prop the dam up. Now, this is beneficial because it saves a lot in terms of materials. Like you can see, as opposed to having this just be a solid wall, you can now have this sort of arcade of arches. So it saves a lot on material. Doesn't incorporate some of the weaknesses of an arch dam. Basically, if one of these arches fails, then that arch is just gone. But the benefit to that is the whole dam won't necessarily fail. So if, say, this arch were to fail, yeah, that entire arch would probably just collapse. But that would still only open, say, this part of the dam. Would not lead to necessarily a catastrophic failure, which is rather important if you're trying to have these dams be as safe as possible. Okay, so here's a diagram of the two different dams. The first one, obviously, the gravity dam on the left, and the idea is that basically that the water will push harder. It is higher pressure the deeper you go, so it pushes harder. Now, in order to counteract that, that's why you see the dam sloped backwards. Basically, you want it to be harder to push the lower you get. So that's why you see the gravity dams slope the way they do. The arch dam basically accounts for that. It looks like this wouldn't hold up from the side. And basically what it does is it makes itself into an arch shape in order to take advantage of the structural strength of an arch in order to hold the water back. But like I said, if one part of the arch fails, then basically the whole thing is going to fail. So that is the risk associated with arch dams. Okay, so that is it for the lesson on dams. I hope you found it useful. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time.